You have a military class, you have a spiritual or religious leaders that are very much like we would have bishops and cardinals and popes.
The reptilians have a mindset that's very different than what humanity has. Reptilians believe that they are superior to all others.
Munz has stated that aliens or extraterrestrials are our brothers in Christ, and we should accept them and embrace them. This is all preparation for what the government has in store for humanity.
Fasten your seatbelts, because we're going to have some severe turbulence. And remain seated at all times. Rough crowd. They never laugh at anything. Never laugh.
Very sense of humor, you know.
Well, I don't know. It's only a problem in this state.
I could tell an elephant joke.
An elephant joke?
Tell an elephant joke.
An elephant joke. Well, I don't know any that are clean enough to have on tape.
Elephant joke?
Yeah.
There's no unplanned elephant.
Oh, well. Hang on. I'll speak to you privately afterwards. So, I guess I was here, let's say at least over a year ago. So a lot has happened obviously since then. Those of you who were here the last time, and maybe a couple of times before that, do remember, hopefully, that I told you there would be terrorist attacks in the United States. And I also told you that there would be the eventual implementation of a martial law and eventually splitting of the United States and a global government. You remember all of that. And so now we're well on our way to that. Remember, the target date of all of this to come to a conclusion for this particular agenda is the middle of 2003. So we only have 13, 14 months left of a semblance of what you know of as the United States and the Earth, as far as you're concerned. I want to give you a little bit of a background to those of you who are not familiar with me, and there are some new people here. I did work in the government for over 25 years. I spent 13 of those years at the Montauk project from 1970 to 1983. And that project did involve mind control, genetic manipulation, and then moved on into other bizarre experimentations is time travel, weaponry research, and weather control, which is well underway now and quite established. As for my history, why I was involved in this, why me particularly, they look for people with certain type of genetics people who have a predisposition for mental activities that you would call psychic or otherwise. Also has to do with my great uncle being the first president of the Soviet Union and my family being involved in government activity on both sides of the Atlantic ever since that time. My grandmother was a Russian spy in World War II, and my grandfather was actually sent to this country to start the Communist Party in the United States, which he did in the 1920s and 30s. And then he disappeared somewhere in the 1960s. That's how I came to do this kind of work. When I was in Montauk in 1983, that project crashed. And those of you who are interested in the details of that, you can read about that in the Montauk Alien Connection book out there in the lobby. And tonight I want to discuss mostly the latest book that I have written called Blue Blood, True Blood, Conflict and Creation, which is, how many of you have read that book? Just a couple of you. And in that book I write about what I know as the true history of the Earth, based on the information I received during those 25 years working for the people who control this planet. There's a lot of history, if not almost 100% of history, and what you've learned in school that is completely false. Ideas, scenarios, events that have either been made up completely or that have been changed or altered in some way to fit the agenda of those who control the planet. I'm going to make a very, very long story short, because we don't have that much time to talk about things, and I do want to give you all an opportunity at the end to ask questions on any topic that you want to ask, and I'm sure that some of you will be able to ask questions, those of you who are able to speak after I'm done. I have to get some of my excitement spray and put it around the room. I guess maybe you're tired after all week. But make a long and now the story, the history of the Earth, as you know, is millions of years old. In actuality, the story of human beings on the Earth is very short in comparison. It's less than 1 million years old. And the original colonists on this planet, again I'm condensing a lot because you can read about it in that book, were reptilian beings. Reptilians represent about 25% of the population of this galaxy. Human life form represents about 70% of the life forms in this particular galaxy, and then 5% are other types of beings of various proportions. Now understand, even though that's only 5% as far as other type of creatures are concerned, if you think that in this galaxy alone there are an estimated 100 billion stars, and then extrapolate that to where in the physical universe there are approximately 100 billion galaxies, and if you do the math, it's astronomical, the number of star systems that exist. And if only 0.1% of all of those stars had intelligent life, that would still be millions of civilizations, and then times that by the infinite realities that exist. In other words, alternate universes. So it's mind-boggling to imagine how many different civilizations are out there. Interestingly enough, on this little planet, in this sector, there's only a couple of interactions compared to all those millions of civilizations, despite what you may have been told by some of the New Age information, which is mostly disinformation. And here again, those of you who've been with me before know the difference, and I'll explain for the new people. This different kinds of information. Misinformation is simply misinterpreted knowledge or information that has not been understood correctly, like an honest mistake. Disinformation is a lie sandwich. That's when you have a lie in the middle with two truths on the end, or two lies on the end and a truth in the middle, but you get hooked in by the truth part, and so you think that the whole rest of it is also true. And that's what the government and all the governments of the earth do when they give out information to the public. It's always disinformation.
What's worse? Which is worse, the
Well, in my opinion, both are not the best. They're not good, either one of them. But the worst, I imagine, if you want to use that terminology, would be the disinformation, because it's purposely given so that you won't get the whole information. You won't understand it completely, and you'll get hooked and skewered in the wrong direction. So it's a deception. So in my opinion, that is the most incorrect of that genre. Now, going back into history, this planet was actually uninhabitable, and it was occupying the second orbit around the sun, and it was a watery planet. And the human civilizations that existed in this galaxy originated in what is called the Lemurian star system. And I'll put that word up on the board for you, because you may hear it a lot in the future. The star system was called Lemuria. And for all intents and purposes, that was the home star system of all human life in this galaxy. And there is another star system that can be seen, I believe, from the southern hemisphere that is called Draco. And it was from here that the reptilian civilizations or beings existed, and they actually attacked the Lemurian civilization and broke it up into many pieces. And the refugees of the Lemurian star system fanned out throughout this sector of the galaxy and occupied a lot of the star systems that are within this particular sector. Now, if you look at our galaxy, about the Milky Way galaxy, it kind of looks like a pinwheel, like that. And this particular solar system that we are in occupies one little point on the tip of one of the arms that reaches out into deep space. So that if you were an invasion force and sought to occupy an entire galaxy, and you came upon a shape like this, the most logical thing for you to do would be to occupy all of the various points, thereby surrounding the entire inner portion of the galaxy, and the portion of the galaxy, and then you can take your time working your way in, because in effect you already won. So that is what the Dracos have done, or the Draconians have done. And they occupied the Earth first. They were the very first colonists on this planet. And in fact, it was their actions that changed the Earth from a water world to one that had inhabitable land masses. And this was close to 1 million years ago. Now, I understand that many of what has been given to you in science as far as carbon dating and fossil dating, dinosaurs being tens and hundreds of million years old, well, most of that is incorrect. If you understand the science of carbon dating, it is very faulty. And it depends on certain atmospheric conditions, and it also depends on the type of soil that the bones are buried in. And in fact, what may appear at some points to be tens of millions of years old may be in effect only a few thousand years old in actuality. So eventually this information will be given out to the public when a new revision of history is given to you towards the end of next year, officially. And so the Draco occupied this planet first. Human refugees from the Lemurian star system came here many thousands of years later. And there were many clashes between the two, because reptilian and mammalian life forms are not conducive to living together. They need different environment, they need different type of food, they need different type of culture, and they don't mix. So there was always conflict. And at one point it was decided that there would be some type of effort to stop the fighting and to merge the two sides together. And this is what the Bible talks about in the chapter Genesis. Now, understand, the Bible is not to be taken literally. It is an allegory. It is a coded history that needs to be deciphered. All of the stories that you read in there may not necessarily have happened the way they're written. It is there as a code. And if you go into the original Aramaic language, in which it was not written in Hebrew, but it was written in Aramaic. There is a code that then can be deciphered, and we've only been able to decipher it in the last few years through the use of computer programming. And in fact, right in the code in the old Aramaic and ancient Hebrew in there, it says can only be deciphered through use of computer. Word computer is clearly written in the code. Now, who wrote that 4,000 years ago? So it was obviously not written by people as you know it. They decided to make a third race of people, one that would be considered native to the earth. And the deal was that they would mix reptilian with human genetics to create a new race. Now, the reptilians were androgynous. That means there was male and female within the same body. There was not a separation of sexes. And so in order to create this third race, the reptilians only agreed to it if a reptilian body was used first and human genetics were added to it. And this is why in the Bible it says, "Let us make man in our image." It's plural. And in the Old Testament, all references to God are plural, as if it were more than one. And that's why it says, "Let us make man in our image." And the story of Eve being created from the rib of Adam is an allegorical story of an androgynous reptilian body being separated into male and female components. That is the allegorical or symbolical story of that particular chapter. And scientifically, you can prove this. Any of you who are in the medical profession, all you have to do is look at how a human fetus gestates in the womb. And you will see that it starts out reptilian-like, and then as it develops, it becomes more human-like in the second and third trimester. And so this is what actually is occurring. The genetics are opening up in the sequences in which they were formated. It was reptilian first, human genetics were added to that, so during the gestation period, that is what formulates. That's just plain as day. Now, what happened was, and this is almost comical when you think about it, although it's really not funny, that when each side donated the genetics to create this new race, they programmed their genetics to be dominant over the other, so that there's always conflict within your own body. That's why your brain is split into left and right hemispheres. That's why you have a reptilian brain and a mammalian brain. That's why you have a reptilian lymphatic system, and you have also skin that wrinkles and peels, as well as other mammalian factors. You are all hybrids of reptilian and human genetics. That's what makes civilization on this planet so unique, because that doesn't exist anywhere else in this galaxy. And that's why there is so much interest in this planet from elsewhere, not only within this physical universe, but also in alternate universes. Whether or not you accept it, there's not just one universe. There are many different universes, all occupying the same structure, if you will. It's kind of like having a radio, and no matter where you tune the frequencies, different stations play. So it's kind of like the different stations within the radio of God mind, if you want to look at it that way. Yes?
I have a question then. The embryos of animals, like dogs, mammalian, and adult cats, don't they have also reptilian?
Yes, many of them do.
Do they have right and left hemispheres?
Many of them do, and that's because all life form on this planet was either brought here or created here under those special circumstances. There is no natural life to this planet. And that's another point, and that is when a creature or when a being is native to its environment, the environment is benevolent to it. Life isn't a struggle, otherwise life could not have existed or been developed. Life on this planet is alien to it. This planet is innately hostile to life. If left on its own, no life would have formed here. It's either too cold or too hot, too watery, too dry, too rocky. There's always a reason why life would not exist on its own on this world. This planet is actually an alien world to you. Nobody came from here. So in effect, you are aliens on this planet, and you are aliens of your own mind. And this, again, is a unique situation in this particular part of the galaxy. I want to jump ahead a few thousand years, and that is the two civilizations that occupied this planet at the time, the Reptilian and the human, were in what you would term Lemurian or Atlantean. That is the common terms that have been used since then. And there was war between the two. And in fact, I have a translation here of ancient Indian Vedas, or texts that are at least 100,000 years old and have been translated, and they describe the war between Lemuria and Atlantis. They also describe the use of weapons that, through the description, could only have been nuclear weapons or devices, as they talk about mushroom clouds and light that obliterates physical reality. They also talk about lances or flying spheres, things that you would call UFOs or flying aircraft or even missiles. All of this has been translated from the ancient Veda. And they also talk about ships called Vimana or Astra, which are vehicles that can fly into the air and even outside of the atmosphere. This was written 100,000 years ago. And you should also know that the ancient Indian civilization, or the Hindu civilization, is actually an offshoot or a derivation or descendancy of the original Lemurian colonies in what is now the Pacific. Now, what happened? The Atlanteans, or those refugees from Lyrae, actually had devices that could harness the geomagnetic forces of the Earth and pull it or force it into a specific location. And when they did this, when it was too powerful, it could break the upper mantle or crust of the Earth and cause it to split and fall in. And that's what they did with Lemuria. They actually used that as a weapon to destroy that continent and make it sink into what now is called the Pacific Ocean. The only remnants of Lemuria that exist above the water, the largest piece is what is now Australia and New Zealand, but also Hawaii, Japan, Taiwan, the Philippines, all of the South Pacific islands, as well as California west of the San Andreas Fault Line. The San Andreas Fault Line is a continental split or section between two continental plates. Theoretically, it shouldn't be mostly in the ocean. It should be all together. And so what's left of the western part of California is actually the edge or coastline of what was Lemuria. Now, what I didn't tell you also is planetary geology, which is a long story, but I'll make it very short, and that is all planets that are formed through the ejection of molten material from a star, like our planet was from the sun, are hollow. And the reason they are hollow is because as this molten material is thrown from the sun and starts spinning in space, it starts to cool, and because it's cooling and spinning, it forms into a globular shape, and the outside starts to harden. But as above, so below. Inside, the molten material is also spinning, and as it spins, centrifugal force forces it to the sides. And as it's forced to the sides, it gets pushed out of openings that appear at what would be the poles. And so then the inside becomes cool as the molten material exits, and then the inside layer starts to harden and cool. So what in effect you have is you have a globe with two openings. The inside portion, or the very center, has what's left of the molten material through gravitational forces suspended in the center of the globe. And in between the outer and inner crusts is the molten material that is trapped between the two hardened layers. And on both sides, plates form or cracks form as they shift. And that's when you have fault lines and even volcanoes form that push out the molten material. And in fact, planetary science has shown that at the 19th parallel of all such planets are volcanic activity. On the Earth, it shows on the Hawaiian Islands, the west coast of South America, southeastern Asia, and even across to Africa. On Mars, the largest volcano in this solar system, the Mons volcano, is located at the 19th parallel. And on Jupiter, the red spot on Jupiter is located at the 19th parallel. This is planetary science of any kind of structure that is thrown from its sun.
In 1851, in what is now known as Iraq, archaeologist and explorer Sir Austin Henry Layard discovered a library with 22,000 tablets containing what we know to be the earliest writings on Earth. The writings date back to over 6,000 years ago when the region was known as Mesopotamia, Sumer, and Babylon. Amongst these vast writings is a story which mirrors the book of Genesis in the Bible. It tells a story of a great flood which reshaped the face of the planet Earth and all of her inhabitants. It tells a story of a tower built and the creation of the spoken word. One of these scrolls includes a star map of what appears to be a sun and its planets. The writings include detailed descriptions and maps of our solar system matching what we know today and beyond. It includes a 10th planet in an orbit between Mars and Jupiter. It is written that the 10th planet Nibiru was thrust into our solar system and collided with the planet Tiamat. The remaining bulk of Tiamat over time became Eridu, the Earth as we know it, and the rest of her became the asteroid belt. In retrograde to the other 9 planets, Nibiru took orbit around our Sun in a long ecliptic or apogee. Lasting 3,600 years, it passes between Mars and Jupiter. In recent years, based on the patterns of our known solar system, astronomers have been looking for a planet with this same orbit. In search of this planet, they discovered the planet Pluto. The search continues. According to the ancient texts, this detailed information was given to them by the Anunnaki, or those who from heaven to earth came. They described the Anunnaki as a reptilian race of gods which came to the earth in fiery ships from their home planet of Nibiru, the 10th planet. It is written that these Anunnaki came to the earth to mine gold and other elements to serve in protecting the atmosphere of their distant home planet. After a workers' revolt, the Anunnaki rulers began to genetically alter Cro-Magnon man to create a slave race, resulting in the human race. It was said that we were created by the gods in clay vessels. It is written that man was forbidden to depict the Anunnaki in their actual form. Just prior to the Great Flood, the bulk of the Anunnaki would return home, leaving numbers of them behind to watch over the earth. Anu was king.
Assigned to Anu to heed his instructions. 300 in the heavens he stationed as a god. The ways of earth to define from the heaven. And on earth 600 he made reside. After he all their instructions had ordered, to the Anunnaki of heaven and of earth he allotted their assignments.
This story of reptilian gods from the heavens creating man is not at all uncommon. It in fact can be found in most every region of our planet. In Japan, emperors claim descent from dragon gods who came from the sky. Australian Aborigines teach of a reptilian race which lives underneath the earth and governs over men. They believe they are descendants of a race of dragon human. China teaches the serpent queen Nukua interbred with man. India calls these reptilian gods Nagas and claim they seeded their royal families. Throughout the Middle East it is believed a serpent race created man. The book of Genesis tells of giants who came from the heavens to breed with the daughters of man. They are called the Nephilim. In Africa they call them Chitauri, children of the serpent. The royal kings of Africa claim descent from serpent gods who came from the sky. In South America, the Mayans teach that their ancestors were the people of the serpent. The Aztecs were said to be created by a serpent woman. In America, the Hopi Indians believed sky gods came to Earth to breed with their women and referred to them as their snake brothers. The word Sioux means snakes, and Iroquois means serpents. It seems the only places you will not find this historical story is where the history has been methodically destroyed. The descendants of King Anu in Sumeria and Babylon can be traced throughout time. The pharaohs of Egypt were from the bloodlines of the Babylonian kings. The rulers of the Roman Empire can be traced to Egyptian hierarchy. All throughout Europe, the royal families can be traced back to the great Roman emperors. 34 of the presidents of the United States are directly descended from European royalty, with the remaining 8 who are only closely related to these same bloodlines. In 1934, President Franklin Roosevelt placed the Great Seal, originally created in 1782 by the Freemasons, on the dollar bill. Represented in the Great Seal is a pyramid and the all-seeing eye, known to be used by the elusive society, the Illuminati. Strung together in conspiratorial confusion are secret societies such as the Illuminati, the Freemasons, and the Bohemian Club. In 1917, National Geographic did a story on a place in Montreal, California called Bohemian Grove. The story reports a place where the world's elite, members of the Bohemian Club, retreat to in late July and conduct an ancient occult ceremony called the Cremation of Care. Every year in July, the world's leaders, media moguls, and members of the World Bank spend 2 weeks of what is known as a men-only retreat at the Grove. In the year 2000, BBC television show World of Wonder infiltrated Bohemian Grove with hidden cameras and aired the video on the BBC. The video shows the large mass of men donning red and black robes and once again conducting the Cremation of Care ceremony. The altar is at the base of a 200-foot owl, the Babylonian symbol of the god Moloch, the god of human sacrifice. In the video, a body is delivered upriver to the altar where it is set on fire. Upon being aired, members of the Bohemian Club reported that the ceremony is a put-on, merely done for entertainment and fun. This history tells a story of our world leaders having a deep involvement in satanic tradition, worshipping our reptilian overlords, the serpent gods. It poses the possibility that we may be and have always been enslaved by our leaders, no different than sheep or cattle.
Now, the reptilians have a mindset that's very different than what humanity has. Reptilians believe that they are superior to all others. And as I mentioned at the bookstore last night, one of the reasons is they are androgynous. They have male and female in the same body. And since this is representative of what exists outside of physical reality, where there is no male or female gender, it's just energy, they consider themselves superior for bringing that type of information to physical reality. You'll also note, based on observing creatures on the Earth right now, that reptilian forms do not evolve or adapt over eons or millions of years. They basically stay the same. And if there's a change, they just die out. Whereas mammalian forms need to adapt and evolve as there are changes occurring in their environment. So to the reptilian mind pattern, they're superior because they don't need to change or adapt. Therefore, they're completely perfect as they are. That's the mindset. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's just the way they think. And so, they go after the Aryan types, or the blonde hair, red hair, blue eyes, green eyes, because the genetics of those people are easily controlled. The mind control over that genetic is very, very easy as compared to other races. This is why, in history, those who saw globalization or control of this planet wanted to promote the Aryan race as the natural form, because those who did this were being controlled by the reptilians. And they found every reason they could think of to make other civilizations or races look inferior. They manufactured that. The reptilians drove another object into the solar system to colonize the Earth. We now call that object the moon. The moon is the only known object in space that's supposed to be natural that doesn't spin. It faces in one direction all the time, like a ship in orbit, and that's exactly what it is. If you send a sonic resonance off of the moon, it pings like a glass, hollow glass. It's not solid. If it were solid, the sonic resonance would make a thump or a bang sound. It doesn't. And in fact, to this very day, if you have a telescope, especially on a full moon, and you train your telescope at any crater in the moon, you will see activity there. You will see lights moving, you'll see vehicles moving, you will see buildings. You can do this if you have a telescope, and it doesn't have to be an expensive telescope either. And they colonized a continent, and there were two main continents at the time. A continent that is known as, or was known as, Lemuria, or in some civilizations they called it Mu. These were reptilian beings. This continent extended over the Pacific Basin. The remnants of it now are Australia and New Zealand, the South Pacific Islands, the Philippines, Japan, and Hawaiian Islands, as well as the coast of California west of the San Andreas Fault Line. That was Lemuria. And one of the plant life that still exists on this planet from Lemuria are the redwood trees. That is what was covering Lemuria. Have any of you ever walked through the redwood forest? It's a very strange sensation, very heavy feeling, but there's kind of an ancientness to it. And it only exists in that one little area by the coastline. Now, they existed on this continent, this vast continent, for many thousands of years, and they colonized an area that we knew as Sumer. Now, what do you think happened to the remnants of the reptilians after Lemuria sank? Anybody? Many of them, if not all that were left, went underground. They went inside the earth. And so, I have another flowchart to give you, which will show you what the reptilians did, because they don't give up, ever. They are insidious in what they do. They decided, now that they were inside the earth, they were not on the moon anymore, they were cut off basically from the Draco star system. What are they going to do? They wanted to recapture the earth in the best way possible, and the best way would be by genetic breeding, hybridization with the human beings on the planet. Now, as far as the reptilians are concerned, once the Lemuria sank, they went underground, and I told you about the hybridization program. That began in Sumer. That was one of the first places that the human-reptilian DNA mix for the shape-shifting reptilians began. There are statues in Sumer showing Semiramis with a human form, a reptilian face, reptilian claws and feet, holding a hybrid baby. That's what they worshipped in Sumer. You can see the picture in any magazine or book related to Sumerian civilization.
It's planetary science of any kind of structure that is thrown from its sun. That's why the Earth actually is hollow. And that's why this is called the inner Earth, and this is the surface. And that's why in the Bible it says, it talks about creatures on the earth and in the earth. That's what it's talking about. Now, in between the outer and inner crusts or surface areas, there are fractures that have existed, or cave or tunnel systems that have formed naturally and some not so naturally, that connect the two sides together. The opening at the North Pole is about 1,300 miles wide, and the opening at the South Pole is 950 miles wide, except this is covered in ice and snow. This one is wide open. And in fact, Admiral Byrd, when he went to the North Pole back in the 1920s, as he approached the North Pole, actually saw open waters, tropical flowers and plants floating in that water, and what we would consider tropical or prehistoric animals like mammoths still at the very edge of this opening. And that is why aircraft are not allowed to fly directly over the North Pole. It has nothing to do with magnetic disturbances. It has to do with they don't want you to see what's there. Plus, the aurora borealis is nothing more than this molten material suspended in the center radiating out and causing the effect of the aurora borealis under certain conditions. It has nothing to do with radiations from the sun. All of that is false science. And very soon they'll be giving you this information. Just like I told you 2 and 3 years ago when I was here, that in 2000, 2001, 2002, they're going to start giving you information based on not only the Earth, but their actual secret government. And what's happened in the last 6 months? They told you there are underground bases. They told you there's a shadow government. They told you yesterday they knew there was going to be an attack. They're telling you everything because they want you to know now. They want you to know so that it will induce fear in you and you will pay attention and do whatever they say. When someone holds all the cards and they're going to win, you want to be on their good side. That's the idea behind it. But I'll get to that in a moment. So this is a planetary structure. When Lemuria sank into the ocean, or actually sank into the upper surface or upper crust of this area, many of the survivors or refugees of that continent went into the inner earth where they exist to this very day. And that began the ancient rumors of hell and fire underneath the earth and demonic creatures that live under the earth. That's where those ancient myths and rumors got started, is when the reptilians had to go inside the earth in order to survive. Now, the reptilians are very patient creatures, and they have an air or feeling of superiority about them as it pertains to humans or mammalians, and there's reasons why. Reptilians, as I mentioned to you, are androgynous. They have male and female in the same body. When you go outside of physical reality, you know that there is no gender. It's just energy, not male or female, just energy. So in their mindset, they feel that they incorporate this God-mind-like understanding already in physical reality, making them superior to mammalian creatures who have to split into male and female. To them, that's more separation. That's one reason. Second thing is, and you can notice this on the Earth right now, reptilian DNA does not change or alter very much over millions of years. It stays pretty much constant, whereas mammalian genetics must adapt and change and evolve constantly in order to survive, and most times doesn't. So to the reptilian mindset, that makes mammalians inferior because they need to adapt and change all of the time, whereas if you are perfect, you don't have to change anymore. So in their mindset, they feel superior over mammalians. Now, it doesn't make it right or wrong. I'm just explaining to you how they think. And because of that, they can take a lot of time to accomplish what they feel they need to accomplish. Time is meaningless to them because they know they are unchanging and their agenda will always be current. Whereas human civilizations will rise and fall and disappear, theirs will remain constant. So they're very patient with what they have to do, and that is why their agenda for this planet, and particularly this country, has its end date as 2003, and they started that thousands of years ago. Now is the time for it to come to a completion. And so, the Atlanteans, despite what you may have read in Sedona Journal and all the other New Age information you probably read, the Atlanteans were not very nice people either. The Atlanteans performed horrible genetic experimentations. They mixed human genetics with dolphin genetics and created what you have learned to be known as a merfolk or mermaid and mermen. There are 3 pockets of those beings that still exist on the Earth. One of them is off the coast of the outer islands of South Carolina. The other pocket is in the Bay of Fundy in Nova Scotia. And the third is off the New Hebrides Islands in Scotland. And to this very day, in all 3 locations, sightings of these type of creatures still exist. They also created what you know as Bigfoot or Sasquatch by mixing their genetics with human genetics. Those still exist also in some pockets on the earth. And they also created an ancient mythological creature that evoked fear even to this very day, and that is the werewolf. And they simply did that by mixing wolf genetics with human, and that actually led to the story of the creation of Rome and the Roman Empire, who claimed that their descendants were twins born of a wolf mother. Twins born of a wolf mother. And so that's where that story comes from. All these stories, all of these myths, both Greek, Roman, and Babylonian, etc., have a basis in fact because they're based on actual occurrences. To this very day, there are humans who are born with webbed hands and feet or extra fingers and toes. These are all throwbacks to the ancient Atlantean genetic experimentation, which is still in existence to this very day genetically. And so the Atlanteans, in their zeal to control everything, also destroyed their own continent by manipulating the geomagnetic force underneath their continent. And they collapsed over 3 different cataclysms into what is now the Atlantic Ocean. All that is left of the Atlantean continent is Bermuda, most of the Caribbean islands, and Azores and the Canaries. Most of the rest is submerged. And in fact, recently, and I believe it was summer of 2001, a submarine working for U.S. research, geological research, was going through the mid-Atlantic range south of Bermuda, where there's this tremendous trench with very high mountains, and they photographed what they said looked like skyscrapers. Of course, they said it was most likely natural formation over millions of years, and sediment built up and coral built up. But when you saw the picture, and I didn't bring it with me, but it looks just like what you would think of Manhattan under the ocean. And so little by little, they reveal this information to you. And what happened with the Atlanteans? Those who survived went to what is now Egypt, Greece, North America, and South America, and parts of Central America. And in Central America, it's very interesting because there they mixed with the remnants of the Lemurians. And there was created the Inca Empire in especially Central and Western South America. Now, contrary to scientific opinion, the American Indians and South American Indians didn't one day decide to leave China and walk across the Bering Straits of Alaska and down North America and to South America. That just did not happen. First of all, their shoes would have worn out a long time before they reached there. Very rough crowd. Next time you come, you got to take some laugh spray. And does it even make sense? Because under that logic, the Indians of South America would have arrived there last, correct? The last location. Then why is it that location had the most advanced civilization? Wouldn't that have taken longer to exist than, let's say, the Eskimos in Alaska? Wouldn't they have the most advanced? They were the first ones there, and they had no civilization. Doesn't hold water at all, because it wasn't true. And so even if you go around the Pacific, you will find curiosities. For example, in New Zealand, you will find in the rural areas stone temples of very high degree and roads that lead from mountainous areas and then end underwater into the Pacific as if they were continuing on, but of course no one knows where they end. And Hawaii, here's a very interesting thing about Hawaii. The government recently sent out a warning to people, and it said that imminently there would be a vast volcanic eruption in Hawaii, but so powerful that it would create a magnificent earthquake. And the earthquake would cause gravitation or gravity to be 1.75 times that of the normal, because the ground bolting up and down so rapidly. Under that circumstances, nothing will remain standing in Hawaii. So when people say to me, well, I'm going to run away from North America and I'm going to go live in Hawaii, not a good idea. Because even the government is warning about that one. and it's imminent, and it will create vast tidal waves that will affect all sides of the Pacific Ocean. But here's the good news: Hawaii is not sinking, it's rising up. So if you were able to survive that blast, most likely you'll be able to live past that because you'll be above ocean. But in that same warning, which was absolutely fascinating to me, in that same warning, the government said that Hawaii was once part of a larger volcanic island that now was submerged. The first time they ever admitted to the possibility of Lemuria. So that was very fascinating. Part of the dissemination of information program that they're giving you between now and 2003. You have also heard about a 12th planet. It's really not a 12th planet, but you know Zecharia Sitchin's work of the 12th planet, who, by the way, and I will just say it, I always get myself in trouble, but Zecharia Sitchin is a disinformant. I think he started out okay, but I met him in Switzerland 4 years ago, and he gave a lecture, in the same place I was giving a lecture, and he totally turned around everything he was saying. He denied everything. So something happened there, and long story, but just know that whatever he's saying now isn't exactly the truth. But there is a planet which is really a vehicle. Now, you have heard it called Marduk, but some civilizations call it Nibiru. That seems to be the more popular word these days. And it has an elliptical orbit around the sun that passes by the Earth every 3,600 years. Now, people thought that was fantasy and that this was all based on the translations of Sumerian tablets from thousands of years ago. Well, lo and behold, January 2001, LA Times, New York Times, front page. NASA has discovered a large planetary body beyond Pluto, which has an orbit contrary to all other planets around the sun, and that based on the present trajectory, it will be in the vicinity of the Earth by mid-2003. That was the last news release on that. New York Times, right? Everything in the paper is true, right? Right? So that's what they released. And so, here's what they do for their legalities. They'll release information one time, and in a way that most people don't pay attention to it, so that should something come up in the future where they said, hey, you should have told us about this, well, here it is. We told you. It was this big, and it was only one day, but we said it. Post it. Just like when you go to a lawyer and you have to sell, and you're looking to settle an estate or what have you, they say post it in the newspaper. If nobody ever reads it, you did it. Same kind of thing. Same principle behind it. And we're seeing more and more of that these days. What happens now? No more Atlantis, no more Lemurian, the Reptilians under the earth, the Atlanteans scattered. It's kind of a free-for-all. A lot of other civilizations, mostly Lemurian-based, come and start genetically altering different various human populations. And so the Reptilians underneath the earth felt it was their time to come to the surface and start retaking it. But they did it in such a way that it was insidious and quiet. And it was through more hybridization. Humans already were hybrids, reptilian human, but their features were predominantly human. So if after all this time a purebred reptilian came to the surface, that would cause horror and fear. So they couldn't do that. They had to create further hybridization, and they started with the Sumerian civilization in what is now Iraq.
The reptilian society is very structured, and there is a hierarchy where we have the elite group, which is the white-winged reptilians. They're very tall, actually have icy blue eyes, and very sleek but powerful bodies. And then it works down all the way, 7 levels in at least the Draco Empire, to a workforce or drone-like reptilians, which are quite small, perhaps 3 to 4 feet high, very brown, scaly skin, not very intelligent, basically do what they are told. In between, you have a military class, you have a spiritual or religious leaders that are very much like we would have bishops and cardinals and popes. They also have an intellectual caste, and then a general mass of people. For all intents and purposes, if you really wanted to know what the Draco Empire hierarchy was like, just look at the Hindu caste system, which was based on that. If you read about Hindu legend and even anything in East Asia, it talks about the Naga, which were the 7-headed reptilians, which came ashore in Asia after their continent sank in the Pacific, and is spoken about in all of the Asian, Southern Asian, and East Asian legends and histories. The 7-headed reptilian, or Naga, really represents the 7 levels of the caste system in the Draco Empire hierarchy. The first time I ever had contact with reptilian beings was when I was working as a teenager, believe it or not, in the Montauk project between 1970 and 1983. They were what I would consider to be of the military or warrior class, very large, powerful, mean-looking, scary-looking. When you're 13, 14 years old and you see an 8 or 9 foot tall creature with fangs and green and yellow eyes coming at you, it's very scary. They were kind of there as observers, along with observers from the US government, the Israelis, the Russians, Germans, and even British. They were there to watch and exchange information on the programming techniques and the technology that the US government had developed from other alien technologies, as well as what they had discovered from Atlantean technologies, which were discovered underneath the Montauk Point. My concerns about the future as far as reptilians are concerned is that the information that will be presented to the public about them will not be accurate. I know that the US government and basically the world government is preparing to unleash a staged alien invasion on the planet, meaning they will use the Blue Beam Project, which is holographic technology, which can be picked up on radar and actually heard and felt by those on the surface, of alien beings, or at least vehicles attacking this planet. They can even have satellites shoot laser beams or other types of weapons onto the surface to make it look like the Earth is actually being attacked. And people, of course, won't know whether it's true or not, but most people, I feel, will think it's true. Then they will have reptilian beings come and become the savior race, chase away this invading force, which as we have seen in the last couple of years, there's been meteorites, comets, other space debris, even ELF transmissions that have been bombarding the Earth and passing by the Earth. And scientists say they didn't see it coming, they didn't know where it came from. It'll then be revealed that the attacking race was hurling these objects at the planet as a weapon. And so the reptilians will chase them away. They will be hailed as saviors. Then they will have information saying that human beings on the Earth having reptilian DNA are actually descendants of this savior race. So we are related. They're like the mommy and daddy race of human beings, which in effect is true, but not in the way that it will be presented to the Earth. And then they will have a staged second coming of Christ, who will say that this is his new holy empire and that we should welcome these races. And that is why the Vatican in recent weeks and months has stated that aliens or extraterrestrials are our brothers in Christ, and we should accept them and embrace them. This is all preparation for what the government has in store for humanity.
Extraterrestrials are our brothers in Christ, and we should accept them and embrace them. This is all preparation for what the government has in store for humanity. This is all preparation for what the government has in store for humanity.